Hello and welcome back to another session of Fuse Animation and Apps, or that's what I'm calling it this week at least. This week I'm coming back to our app with animations, and let's give a quick brief where we are, and I'll do this and I'll introduce myself right after. Last week we were left with this image. We were doing some basic animations. The point of this was to show how to do these animations, and I'll be actually releasing this source code as a demo app, hopefully in the end showing the sample code as we do it. Okay, let me just get rid of this out of this way. And so we had these basic ones like bounce right. We could also shake it. We added a small pulse, and we added a swing to it. These were the basic ones, and what I want to do today is I want to show an example of how to get these indicators on them. You see them on the phone all the time, little indicators, and hopefully you don't see one at 13,000. That's a little bit weird, but we should support those as well. I'll show you how you can make those today and add simple animations for alerts, and we'll do that. And back to that again. So again, this is what I do. I'm edA-qa mort-ora-y. I'm working at Fuse, and we have mobile development tools that focus on collaboration of UX, and this tool, what we're working on now for demos, and one that focus on UX feedback, so the UI that actually shows things happening. And this is part of my works on the team. I work on the engine that does these types of animations and layout. So let's get into this, what we're happening. First off, let's check this out, this eggplant here. We had a bit of feedback from our product design people that the aesthetics of the eggplant, they didn't much like the eggplant. And to honor their input into this, we're going to give this a new appropriate image for now, and one that'll better reflect what they want in the software. And let's save that, and let's see if this one looks a little better for them. We'll see if they're happy with that. Good. So now we have this. This is at request of our product design people, and we'll see if they like this a little bit better than the eggplant, and we can make them shake a bit as well. And this is like a nice angry thing if they're angry at us. Let's add an indicator to this as well. Let's make this a really angry indicator, and we'll do a different style this time. This time we're going to do another timeline, and it's going to be a pulse, but we want to do a pulse red. And what we can do here is we're going to add a rectangle to the background. And by pulse red, I want something to pulse in the background that's actually red. And the color will be, let's make this a deep red so we can see it. So something like, oh no, it's partially deep red color, and we'll take the same corner radius so it looks like it's the same item as the one above it. Do we have everything we need here? And red rect. And we're going to scale this one. We're going to scale this, the target equals. This might not actually work. How do we actually do this? We're going to hide this one for now. We're going to put this one actually in the background. Whoops. Visibility equals collapsed. We don't have to collapse it, but it's a good way to start since it's not usually there. And change red rect dot visibility equals visible. And scale target equals red rect, factor equals 0.5, and change opacity, change red rect dot opacity equals 0. We'll make it fade away. Make this take a half second or 0.3 seconds. This one as well. And when you animate opacity or any value, it's really good to set a default value. And this is just because it gives a nice setting to it, and sometimes some items don't technically have defaults even though they render as none. Opacity does, but it's just a good habit to have. So let's check. So we have this pulse red, and if we want to do this, we're going to find where we did pulse before, where we triggered this, and I didn't get a chance to clean this up down here, so we're still going to copy and paste the ugly way. And I'll just stick this at the top so we don't have to scroll down too far. And we'll call this one pulse red. And we really only want this to go forward, so I'm going to do pulse forward on this and see what comes out of here. Okay. Okay, so I'm scaling the wrong way. That wasn't the intent. It absolutely was not the intent. So we're going to put it factor 1.5. We're also not actually on the right side. I want it to be behind it. But this is one way you could do a pulse, and this would show... Actually, this one doesn't appear so bad in front. And this would give us our angry face that, you know, if somebody doesn't like an eggplant and you could trigger this, you could maybe trigger this for if you have an email from your boss that you don't want, then you suddenly have this angry face and it pulses red for a second. And this is one way to do it. This one actually looks okay with it in the front. That shock of red is actually a nice pulse. I was originally planning to put it behind, but I got the layering a bit wrong, but that's actually okay because I think we see this better. And so this is the pulse. And so you can make it shake and pulse at the same time. Shake and pulse. And this again, you can combine all these animations. So if you're bouncing right, you could also bounce. Whoa. Apparently you can't. Apparently something went wrong there. Well, I'm going to have to check that one. So something, I have to, oh, I know what it is. It's this visibility collapsed. That's not supposed to have happened, but there might be a weakness there. So let's change this to hidden instead, and that should fix that weird problem we just had. Oh, that's strange. Oh, well, sorry about that. I'm going to have to actually look into this and fix that. Combination. I'm going to stick a to-do in here for me. Combination with bounce caused disappearing act. Most animations work together. There are a few like this that if you happen to combine wrong, weird things happen, but it's actually pretty rare now, and I think this is probably a small defect I have in the code, and I'll go fix that. But we have this now. This is good enough to swing, and I think it has to do with the scaling when you scale things too many times. Alright, but anyways, so we have the red guy, we have this, and this is one form of indicator. This is probably the quickest indicator we can do. And I said we chose the frowny face because we had some feedback from Product Design about the eggplant not being desired. Okay, but I think we've had our fun with that. Let's actually stick the envelope on there now. We're going to copy this envelope over and give it a nicer, more realistic icon now. It's more realistic. You'll have an envelope in there than a frowny face. Wow, that's small though. What happened? So this font is a little bit weird. I think it's taken a very small. It might not have the emoji one. Let's see if we have another envelope. You can stick an image in for any of these things. Images work just as well. I didn't want to take this email one because honestly, who ever seen this icon with an E on it? I have never seen email represented this way. It's almost like a ridiculous representation, but at least it might be an emoji, so I might have a bigger graphic for it. And that's the only reason I'm using that one, as opposed to the plain envelope. And okay, maybe it's just a bit small, but at least we have color here, and this actually looks more reasonable with the @ Let's increase the size a bit though. And we'll make this an icon at the bottom. These things are actually really big then. This makes a lot of sense. Now we have this. Now our pulse red is not as angry. But now what I want to look at is maybe adding that typical indicator. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to speak up. I don't mind stopping and explaining anything in the code, whether it's the layering of background, what I did. I ran through this first example quite fast because I just want to show the basics and to run through the old thing, but I have no problem stopping. And all these pulses at the bottom, I said I copied and paste. There is a way to clean this up, but I just want to focus on the little badge now. To get the badge, I'm going to add a little tiny bit of JavaScript. I want to do this to show how this might actually work in reality. So we're going to create something called an observable. If you haven't worked with observables before, this is how you deal with dynamic data in the code. We have a new system to doing this, a state-based system, and it's a little bit more set up. So for this example, I'm going to stick with the very simple approach because we don't need to do much, and there are still a few cases where you can use observables. And so let's do exports email count and we're going to start it at a value of 0. Now we have to stick the email count somewhere on this rectangle, and we can stick it on top. We're not going to use a circle. We're going to use a rectangle again. Now the reason I'm using a rectangle as opposed to a circle, if we look back at the graphics here, you notice it's usually a circle, except when the number starts to get big, you need to stretch this, and therefore a circle is not useful. If you actually, to get the circle appearance, what we'll do instead is we'll give it a really high corner radius, and we'll give the corner radius bigger than the actual box. You can stick this way above the limit, and it's just going to cap out at being perfectly round anyways. And we'll do this, and we'll say color. Red actually seems like a common color for this, so let's choose a bright red. Corner radius, and we're going to say alignment equals top right. And if we see the position of this, we're going to set the anchor to. And this is a bit weird. For now, we're going to center it in the corner. This might be a bit tricky as we... Actually, if I look at those numbers, if I look at the visuals over here, it's not quite centered. It's more like 70%, 70%. That's something we can play with. And we need to add the value in here. And this is email count. We're binding to the JavaScript value. Even if you're using the new state-based system, you're still going to have these bindings. And font size equals, we're trying to make this big, so let's make it 20. Font color, and this is white as it usually is. So let's see what happens with this. I get an error, must have typed something wrong. Text, okay. I often get this confused font color, and because it's font size, and so I often think font color. It seems a little bit inconsistent in the naming, and we're sorry about that. Sometimes we have that. It's hard to correct all the names. Okay, so we have a 0 here. It's not so pretty looking at all. It's not really in the right place. Top right, 70. Because we put it too far up, it should be down. And we need to put some padding in here. And we need more on the sides than the top. And let's see how that looks. This looks more like an indicator here. It's not totally round because it's not wide enough. What we could do is we could put a minimum width and say 50. Oops, maybe 50 was a little bit too high. And our text, it's not in the center, so let's say alignment equals center. So we can get that basic, this is our basic indicator look. Now there's only one problem with this indicator. We haven't animated it, and the bigger problem though is, well, we have 0. Nobody wants to be alerted to 0 messages. Right? You never see examples of 0. The icon is simply gone if there's 0 messages. And I think ours is a bit too small now relatively. If we see it usually occupies a little bit more space. So let's make ours slightly bigger, or that might be about right. I'm not sure. Let's leave it for now. It's something you can fix relatively quickly. I'd say you can make the font size slightly bigger, and that would be enough to make it bigger, or you can make them, but we'll leave it back. We had it, I think that was good. So one of the first things we may want to do is say, well, if there's no email, let's just hide it. But that's the general first case. So let's hide this whole thing by default. We're going to say visibility hidden. Okay, it's hidden now. That's great. It's hidden. So now it'll go away. But we need a way to make it show up when there's email. So let's put a condition here. Let's put a condition while true, value equals email count is greater than 0. And we're going to see email count as like a new email count, that the business logic is taking care of what's new, because obviously we can't do that on the UX side. It can't give high logic. You could compare it to like an old email count, but this makes it simpler. And the first thing we can do here is give this a name, email indicator dot visibility visible. But we have no way to make that show up. So let's add a few more things down at the bottom. We don't want the pulse, so let's add another column into our little stack panel here. We're going to add another stack panel. Give an orientation equals horizontal, and what I want to do is create some buttons that add and remove emails. So the first thing was we want is text equals add email, and when it's clicked, we're going to call add email. Button text equals clear, and we'll say clear email. And we might want to align this center as well. Enter center. Put some item spacing between it so it's not jammed together. So we have add email and clear email. We have to export functions from JavaScript like this. Again, in the new state-based system, we would do this slightly different, but the actual exporting ends up the same. You have functions and you bind to them. So for email, add email, we're simply going to increment the count. .value equals 1. This adds a new email. And clear email will reset the value. Email count .value equals 0. So we have these new rows, and if we add the email, you'll see our count appears. It's not animated yet, but this is how it appears, and as we add emails, it goes up. And if we get to 10, you notice it stretches a little bit. Maybe our padding isn't quite wide enough. You can see that now. We might want to say padding 7,2 instead. And that gives us a little bit general indication. And if we clear it, it completely disappears. And this is good. But we wanted to animate this. We don't want it to come from nowhere. This depends on your app. If you're an icon on the phone, because most users are not at the home screen, they never actually see these numbers go up. But if you're in your app and you have this on a little bar somewhere in the taskbar, you might want to animate this slightly to draw attention that they now have some new event or something they should look at. So we can do that directly in the while true here. But let's do a different pulse instead. Hey Sasha, glad you came to this show as well. It's a little bit different than the Rush show. We're playing with animations here, but hopefully just as much fun. So let's do with like the other timelines. We had this way where we can animate it, and we want to do something like this. Pulse, and I'm going to say backwards for a second. Target equals new email. And I'll say why in a second. And on the rectangle, we're going to put a timeline because this feels more right. This is like where this animation is. It's related to that. And this pulse backward happens as soon as it triggers forward once. We're going to trigger that. And we're going to say this only triggers when going forward. Actually, no, it doesn't make a difference. Let's just do this. Let's see what happens first, and I'll explain bit by bit what I change. And I'm actually even going to change the pulse backward for a second, just to say pulse, just so we can explain every little bit. And what we may want to do is we may want to make this come from the front to the back. So let's make this start in the back. This starts at -1, so behind the thing. And the first thing we want to do is we want to change. Sorry, now I'll explain it. Let's get rid of here. Sometimes I get ahead of myself, and I'm sorry about that, so I'll ask if there's a problem. We want to change the Z offset. Email indicator. It's -1, duration equals 0.3. And we're also going to move it a bit. Move vector equals, actually going to do X and Y independently. X equals -20, Y equals 20, duration equals 0.3. And I'll see what this little effect does first, and we'll clean up the bits here. As I should actually have the offset here. The default's 0, but I have to follow my own rules about specifying the default. So now when I add, okay, assuming I don't get an error, if you're new to Fuse, it's a development tool for mobile apps that uses a declarative language that makes it really easy to do animations and apps, entry things, business apps. We're focusing just on animations here. It does a lot more than this, obviously, but that's the focus of this show. Email indicator. There's nothing named email indicator. So I typed something wrong here. No, I didn't. Capital I indicator. I actually don't like this font that you can't tell what difference between a capital I and an L. I kind of don't like fonts. I like serif fonts for that reason, but I'm keeping this way. Is it like Ionic? I don't know. I don't know what Ionic is, so I can't tell you if it's similar or not. I'm sure our product people would love to answer that. Okay. So you notice when I first had it, and when I clear, now, you notice it disappeared. And it's not playing the direction. It's kind of like looking at... Thank you, Aldous. You can clear that better. And this is what the pulse does. It plays it backwards and forwards. So let's just play it backwards now. Backwards means it's going to start at -1 and then slowly come back to wherever it was before. And in this case, we want it in the front. But we don't want it to be hidden either. We have the hidden, and that comes to visible. So let's save this, and let's see what happens when it goes backwards instead. Okay. And now you notice the problem with the indicator that we're not behind the blue box. This was the same thing with the red pulse. I actually want to be behind the blue box. So we're going to have to change this panel up here and put the coloring inside of it. And now we're going to change all of this. We'll see how much of this we can change. This messes with a lot of the other transforms. Okay. So our panel is going to be empty at first, and now we're going to stick this background rectangle inside of it. Layer, and I shouldn't say layer equals background now. I'm just going to have to stick this at Z offset equals 0 so we can layer it correctly. 0 is the default, but if you have 2 at 0, the one that comes first is on top, and we'll make this one explicit. And this means that the little email text, I'll put this on top now to be explicit. Let's put this right on top of it. This is actually on top of it. And now this little indicator should be behind it, except there's a rectangle here at the bottom I've got to close off. Again, what I'm doing here is because I want this animation behind the rectangle, I'm sticking this blue rectangle inside a common panel. And when everything's in the same child, then we can work with the Z offset. If they're in different childs, the Z offset is going to make no difference because they're all in the same one. I think I cleared this now. Okay, not quite. Okay, it did. You notice it didn't show up right away. And Z off sticks to it back. So I'll show you what happens if I leave the Z offset here I put it so it never comes to the front. Then you'll see it bounce around the corner there. And this is what we want. We want it to bounce a little further around the corner. And then we want it to come around to the front. That's the goal of my animation, to make it look like a bounce comes out and comes back in. And we're going to make it do like this. 1, 1, relative to, and size. However big this thing is, we want to make it do like that. It's going to bounce in and out. But this is where we're going to have to use a new feature. Because move can only move in one direction by default, we're going to add a timeline to this. We're going to move it back and forth. And so what we're going to add are what are called keyframes. Plus 1 minus equals 1. This is how far we want it to move away. And, oh, time, I think, at 0. At 0 we want it to be there. And we remove it from here. We say not here. Take this duration off here. And then we want it to be slightly over the side, so 0.5. This should be just enough to make it visible. 0.5 time equals 0.3, and we're going to extend this a little bit more than necessary. Keyframe x equals 0, y equals 0, time equals 0.6. And this will move it over and come it back, make it come back. Which isn't going to be enough at first. Because watch, it's going to come out. Whoops, I got one of those wrong. Sorry, this has to be minus still. Clear that out. Clear it. Alright, now, since we're having fine control over the timeline, we might as well get rid of the backward and just say forward now. Because then we can make it jump to a random spot. So it changes it forward and say it's, or do I really want to do that? I'm trying to think if I really want to do that. Yeah, let's just do it that way. Let's do it. And then our change here, whether you use pulse forward or backwards, once you really understand timelines as to which way they're playing, you can work with it a bit better. Just understand that all these things have default forward and backward timelines. And I just usually have to get the ordering right. And if you want to play it one direction, you have to use pulse forward or pulse backwards. And that's what we're trying to do here, play it in one direction. And honestly, pulse backward makes more sense here, because if you try to get from somewhere to its resting state, and our resting state is the icon in front, pulse backward makes more logical sense because you're going to specify the offset and go back to where it should be. This is exactly like an adding animation. Adding animation works the same way. But we're going to have to change this ordering around, because the final frame now is where it should start, because it's starting back here. That's okay, and then it ends up here. And it's getting mad at me for something. 30 expression cannot be empty. Whoops. Somehow I missed the 0. Okay. So you see it just come to the front, which isn't enough. We want it to come all the way. And it has to do with the Z offset where we're not seeing it. It should have come back a little bit more, and we'll fix that too. So we're going to make change use, and this is where you can give change a target. And we can also make it use keyframes. And we're just going to line it up with the keyframes down here. So you can take it like this. And instead of X, you can just use value to make it clearer. And by default, we want to make it start in the back. And once it gets to this point, and this is like, this is, where is it supposed to be? Minus 0.5? This should be 0.5. The moment it's here, it can come to the front then. So at this point, we can be right at the front. We're going to make it 0. Just so the next step, it actually comes right to the front, because our actual rectangle up here is 0. I mean, this one. Right here at this point, it's going to be exactly equal, and it won't matter, but the exact next step is going to go step to the front. And again, we're playing this backwards. We're going to put the numbers backwards. So let's see if we can get this working. Okay, so I got something slightly wrong. It comes to the front in a weird pattern. What did I screw up? It goes too far to the X. And we want it to go... minus 0.5. That's where we want it to go. And we need it to stay in the front. So the Z offset here, it has to be in front of this 1. So by default, it's going to be in front of the 1. And let's see if we can actually get this working now the way I want. Clear it off and add an email. There we go. That's actually working now. So it slides in from the back and comes to the front. This is a very basic animation, and you notice that's a bit unsmooth. So here we can say interpolation equals smooth instead. And down here as well, interpolation equals smooth. And we're going to speed up the first bit because we don't need to see that, and make it slow down a bit. And it's getting mad at us. Probably keyframe interpolation. Sorry. It's got a really long name. And sorry about that. I probably chose that name. But it's because of the keyframes, and we needed to distinguish between anything else. So now if we add an email, there we go. That makes it like it swings it out on the side, swings out and comes in the front. And now you're thinking, but we can improve the pseudo 3D effect. And mobile land is the land of pseudo 3D effects. And pseudo 3D effects make a lot of sense because it's a flat device. You don't want a lot of 3D effects, but pseudo 3D effects have a nice sort of ring to them. It associates it with nature, but we know it's not. And so it gives a nice effect. But how can we get that? Well, let's scale this one instead. As it's coming around, we can add a scaling as well. We're going to scale this whole thing. I'm going to put the same thing with the interpolation. The default is linear, and as I said last show, linear makes a lot of sense as a default case so that you have less surprises, because by default you don't expect these keyframes, you expect the keyframes to be exact. The moment you do smooth, you don't follow the exact keyframes, but you get a cubic Bezier instead. So this is why we made the default linear and not smooth, just so there's less surprise, even though in a lot of cases you want smooth. There's a lot of cases where you want linear as well. And unfortunately, there's a feature request I didn't finish that'll let you specify the exact tangents, and that'll give you even more control. But right now, this gives you a lot of options by adding keyframes. So at the very end, we need the scale to be 0, 1. And again, we can put value here if you're dealing with just 1. Value and x are very similar. X is actually one part of value, but sometimes value is nicer to read when you're dealing with something like scale. And this is at time equals 0. Keyframe value equals. And we want to get a bit bigger when it comes in the front. So let's make it a little bit overkill. Let's do overkill. Time equals 0.3. And value equals. I'm going to start small, so it's going to somewhat go to the front. Okay, and that might have been overdoing it because we didn't go far enough around now. And so, first of all, we're overdoing it. Secondly, we might need to move a slight bit further because now it's bigger. It's 1.5 times the size. So let's make it go a little further out. Okay. And I'm not totally satisfied because it no longer looks like it's coming from the back. It looks a little bit funny now. I'm going to split up the scaling factor so it looks a little clearer, because when it first comes from the back, at time 0.3, I actually want it to be just its actual size. And then 0.15, as it's coming to the front, it'll look bigger. This might do that. Yeah, that looks a bit better now. So that looks like it's actually rounding the corner and coming in the front. So that gives us a clear indicator of here's some email, you have new email, and it only happens when we get new email, otherwise it just leaves it here. And that seems reasonable. And so if you happen to be looking at the screen, reading something like, oh, what's going to happen, then that gives you just enough attention that, look, maybe you should pay attention to this. You got something new here. And so we did that all with this timeline and this while true. And this while true, this does something you normally shouldn't do. We put an action inside of it, pulse backwards. And these trigger when you go forward by default, but you may want to be explicit. This triggers at exactly 0 when it first starts, and direction equals forward. And in this case, that happens to be sort of the default. Okay, and we screwed something up there. That's what I was just about to show. Do we want it to go back when it hides behind? That's kind of hard to say, yeah? So all of that, should it hide behind the back when it goes behind? Now how would we do that? in this case, we would take out the pulse. So let me put the pulse back to the way it was. What if we wanted to go forward and backwards? Well, we can no longer play the timeline just once. We can, or can we? Sure, why not? This is a bit difficult now. Where can we do that? Let's put this visibility first. Where do I want to put that? Yeah, that structures it very differently. I structured this to get it only appearing when it goes to the front. And to get it to go to the back, we'd want this all to play backwards. But manually controlling that is not perfect. Well, we can do that another way. If you want it in the back, let's comment out this part. And we'll put it up here instead of the timeline. We'll put the condition directly on here. And our condition is backwards right now, but we'll just set this up first. Okay. Where's it going now? They should have done something. If email count, okay, so the visibility. Let's set the visibility to visible, because nothing's changing it anymore. Okay, now I got the numbers backwards. Alright, I got it backwards now. Alright, and you're thinking, yeah, that's another option. So let's change this first. If email equals 0. And it's saying this is what our thing is. When it's hidden, it goes in the back. Clear. And so we add an email, it comes to the front. And we clear it, it goes to the back. So that's one way of doing that. We have an adding and removing one. That's one way of doing it to go back and forth. But let's do this a different way. Let's put this one back to the way it was before. And then we'll do a few other approaches of doing other indicators on here. So we can show you some different approaches to creating indicators. It really depends on what you actually want to do with this. So we're going to put this one back at this way, add an email. And let's create a different indicator that comes out forward and backwards. And I'm trying to think of how we can do this one. We are going to do, let's do all this as one first. We saw the while, or shall we do adding and removing first? Let's just do a while one first, and let's put a little scrolling thing out on the bottom that shows where it comes from. And we'll add a totally other one here, and we're going to add a, we'll do something called an alert. Exports alert equals observable, and we'll just leave it empty for now. And we're going to add a function called setAlert. Exports that alert.value equals alert. Or let's say, yeah, okay, let's just say alert. I can't think of a good name right now. And then clear alert. Oh, I should do clear here. Works as well. Thank you. Wait, where did I type there? There's exports. So we'll make it pop out on the bottom now. And we'll stick this in the position where it's there first of all, just to see what it looks like. Corner radius equals 10. What is our default corner radius we have in the back? Is 10 equals 10. And let's give it a softer red color. So we're going to give it, I don't know, let's take the exact same color here, but swap the red components out. Just so it has the same intensity and saturation. That'll make a little purple panel at the bottom. Alignment equals bottom. we'll leave its normal text size, and then its anchor, we're going to stick it on the, we're going to stick it right to the bottom as opposed to, okay, again, I'm going to leave out the anchor first to show you what happens, because not all of you are used to using anchor. Text alignment equals center, value equals alert. Font size equals 22. Text color, and we're just going to make this white for now. And where did it go? Now we need to set the alert. It's empty right now, and because it's empty, this text has no size, but I also have the wrong text here. Okay, so we have to add another panel at the bottom here. And we'll copy this one because it's a very similar setup. Whoops. No, again, I'm gonna clean this part up off show again, because this is actually not very common that you have big long lists of stuff like this. There's not like really a best practice here, and I'm just gonna clean it up for simplicity. I'm gonna say add alert. Add alert and clear alert. I think those are the names. Add alert and clear alert, and that should set the alerts. And we didn't get the alert showing up, so there's a problem here. It's good to look at the problem logs. Oh well, you know, the crashing problem log is also another issue. What happened here? Just check my console. I might need to restart this. Something went wrong here. Well, let's just kill that all. Sorry about that. We'll restart that. What could I have done wrong there? Exports value, alert, clear, alerts. Don't know what happened. I had it running for a while, but that should be okay. Take a drink while waiting for it to load. But that bottom at the bottom, the stuff with the scroll view and the actions, it's really ugly right now if we actually want to make an example out of this that you can actually play around with your own. So I'll get somebody to help me clean that up afterwards so it looks a bit prettier. Okay, and add alert doesn't appear to be working. That still works. Clear those. Problems? What are our problems? Wow, this is not good. Whatever our problem is crashing the program. That's really weird. Why would it do that? Let me logically think first while this thing's crashing. I'll just let it crash. Quit this. What could it possibly be? Let's set our default alert to be text so we can see it. I'm not clear on what might be causing that. Bottom color. And I'm going to do something weird. Git status. Git commit. Broken point. Just so I can get back to exactly where we are. And let's see what happens. Unless that text causes it, then I might have to go back to get rid of it. But I don't think that's doing it. Add alert, clear alert. Oh. There is no add alert, and that's causing it to crash. That is weird. That's not, absolutely not supposed to happen. We make this mistake all the time. I don't know what's special about it here. Calling add alert crashed. When we actually want set alert. So I can follow this one. A very clear reproduction should make this relatively easy to find the fix for it. But I'm really surprised because we type these wrong all the time. I mean, and we've never seen this issue before. So I really don't know what's causing it. That's weird. Alright. So it doesn't crash now, but our text doesn't show up, and that's a lot easier to deal with. And I think it's just because of our formatting. So let's just get it showing up first. so we have something to show. And figure out this rectangle, corner radius 10, color, alignment goes bottom. Text, font size, value is alert. Alert, exports to alert. So let's put something around the alert to make sure. This is always good if you want to see if your binding is correct or not. Okay, so our binding appears to be fine. Let's give it a height. It just doesn't want to show a rectangle at all. Oh, yeah. I know what the problem is. And it's the exact thing I wanted to show you. We're not seeing, because all this stuff, this color here is all on top of it. And it's following the Z order that this is behind it. So the Z offset, if we put it in front, or we move it to the top of the file, we should see the alert in front. But we don't want the alert there. We want it below. We want it to show up like slide below, which is why I never put it in front in the first place. And this is what I want to share with the anchor, is that by default, the position you have right now, when you say bottom, it puts the bottom of the element at the bottom of the element it's in. And that would make sense because that's the default. But what we're saying with anchors, we're saying we'll take the middle of the element this way, so still in the X, and take the top of it, 0%, the top is the element, and that's going to align to the bottom instead. So like that. And now I can get rid of this weird text in here and just have nothing. So now we have the alert. If we add the alert, it's there, and we clear it, it should go away. But actually, let's just set it back to. Yeah, there's a reason it doesn't go away, because there's a default here. We have to do clear alert. Okay. When dealing with strings, you have to worry about the case that by default, this alert bound to the value will not revert back to an empty string. And it's kind of a complicated story with components, but if you needed to clear back, you put clear. But the big issue here is we don't want this here at all if it's not supposed to be here. So let's hide it. And before we do all this adding and removing way, let's codify this while true way as well. Show value equals, and we can say alert equals empty. Oh, empty string. It's an empty string. Let's get this thing out of the way. We can move. Actually, put this right inside the rectangle so we can avoid having a target. So if the string is empty, and there are some while string functions as well, but while true is a generic one, you can always think of that as an option. Y equals -1 relative to equals size. Duration equals 0.3. Easing equals, let's say bounds out or in. I'm not sure which one makes sense here. Okay, now why did we not move? Something wrong with the alert now. Well, let's check the string ones. Let's go off to Fuse Tools, the website, and check our document and actually see what while string is, because I might have a mistake there. It might have to do with the binding of an empty string again. While string. Let me add a to-do here. Sometimes these are user mistakes, and I make them as well, but I can't immediately say what the problem is. And I'll just stick this in the to-do. And we'll add a new one. One that I know should work. And so we have a test, so we have while to value equals alert. Test equals. Okay, I have a very good idea what it is. And it's going to be the same thing. Test is going to have the same failure. Is empty. So we have all these string tests. If it's empty, and this is going to have the exact same failure, and I understand why now. And go away. Clear. How do I get rid of this? Ah. Uh-oh. Okay, I'm going to report this. Now, chances are we wouldn't release the product this way, and I'm actually using a bunch of dev branches right now, as I often do, and I really should stop doing that. So we obviously have a small regression in the dev branches, and I'm going to have to refile that to make sure that doesn't make it out anywhere. That just slows us down a little bit. I don't think this will affect you. Okay, now why is this? And this has to do with the clear again. Because by default the string bindings don't go back, we actually needed the clear alert here as well. And that has to do with the bindings, that strings don't go back. You're actually better off when using strings not to call clear up here, but to say value equals nothing instead. Then it's gone. Because when you clear it, it's really just gone. It doesn't have an empty string value. It's gone. It doesn't exist. And that's when the problems with those bindings, when a string doesn't exist, it just keeps the old one and goes, okay, I don't know what it is. Oh yeah, well string too. Thanks, all this. And so we don't need the clear now because we're explicitly setting it to all this provides great support in all of our channels, even for us internal developers, as you see. And let's wait for it to build that project a bit. I must have saved something, and we'll see what's happening. Looks like it's taking a while. I might have saved it at the wrong time. It's weird. I think I got it. I think I saved it at exactly the right time to set it in a weird state. Closing tag as well. Yeah. I think we still have that issue with the preview that if you save at the exact wrong time and it built incorrectly, it fails to show the fail screen. I know it sounds weird, but we can actually fail to show the fail screen. So once it's here, it's okay. It'll start showing it. But thanks, Ahmed, about that. And let's see if it works now. Add the alert. There we go. Now the bouncing obviously looks stupid. And so we have the wrong bounce. We want bounce in. I can never logically think which one we want, so I just tend bounce in or bounce out. There we go. Now you notice this is where exactly why you have this thing with alerts. Let's actually make use of this clearing the value, and I can show you how you can make use of this. If we clear this value for alert, where did I put alert now? And we don't clear it here, but we clear it here, we can keep the old value while it's disappearing. So you notice how it disappeared when it went up. So now when we add the alert, and now when we clear it, it stays there. Because we're not clearing it. This is one of the reasons why we first set this up, and when you're doing animations you forget this, but it's one of the reasons why it's there. It's also for removing animations. So it falls down. And now we want the second option, the very common one. It doesn't look good to bounce back, so our easing back is going to be, I don't know, what should the easing back be? Cubic out, maybe? You can play with all of these. Sometimes it's nicer to play with in the tool. I tend to be sticking code. So you notice I'm always stuck in this compact view, but you can stick in this view and you can actually modify these things in here. But I tend to stick in code. And we still have this text problem. If you have the perfect size, it gets an ellipsis instead. So now the alert. Now that's right. Sorry, these are backwards. Because we're hiding the string is, this while string is to hide it. We have these backwards, and again, it's the duration thing, the orientation. So add alert, bounce in, and then it clears out that way. And it hides it nicely. And you can actually see it there in the aliasing border. So what you may want to do is at the very end, you can change name equals the alert hidden, and we'll say progress at 1. And this is the short way. Instead of trying to say track the durations, we're just going to say progress at, well, this is a value between 0 and 1. Let's just hide it right at the end so we don't see it at all. And then we get errors because I did something wrong. Change does not have a property called progress at. Then it's probably at progress. Then it might just be at, sorry. What? Change at. Sorry, I meant to mean actions. This is just a delay. I'm thinking of actions. Actions have a progress. Okay. Now, you can't really see it via the stream. I can almost guarantee that, but that little fringe should be gone now. If you want to see that it's actually doing something, this delay, this should be delay 0.3, by the way, I screwed that up. If you actually want to see this is actually doing something, let's put it halfway just so that we can see it happens. And you notice that half shows up halfway. And going back is a bit weird because of the way, because of our bouncing in and out. So let's just set it to 0.3. It's a minor visual adjustment. If you're really close to the screen, you can actually see the difference when it's up. If it's still, there's a little red fringe. Now this line here before, just recall, was for the other effects. And so these bouncing ones, as you see, should include all the animations, all the new things on it. They're all relative to the whole item. So shaking should shake the whole thing as well. Bounce right, we might get some weirdness, but it still works. Okay, and swing might get weird now. But it still works. And you see the alert stays on top, so that's the swings works. But the swing feature animation didn't take into account this, and that makes sense. We kind of did a cheap, we cheated a little bit going back, but we'll be okay with that. And pulse now, what does it do? Pulse does the whole thing. You have to check each animation what it does. Okay, but what we have now is we have the second approach. We have the alert, and we can clear it. And we also have emails. And those ones are just one way, that when you clear them, they just disappear. And that's the one effect, that's the effect we wanted there. And this one has a going forward and back. This is the weather effect. Now we're going to try the one more effect that Olga said with the adding and removing animation. It's another way to do it. Which one you use is very hard to decide sometimes. I actually don't recommend adding and removing animation for what we're about to do. I think these wild approaches are fine. And adding and removing animation can sometimes be cleaner, but trying to think of another alert we want to add. Where do we want this one to come from? Let's just say, I have no idea. Let's just make it scale in somewhere. Let's make it a highlighting one. So we're going to put it on top of this rectangle. So it's going to be a slight Z offset, but behind the text. So this is where if you want to put things between two things, we're going to put the text slightly in front of the rectangle so that we have room in between here to actually stick something new without putting it up here in the file, because we want to put here in the file. And I'm at a loss for indicators here, what we want to do. Let's say we want to put a star in this one. A 9-pointed star. And offset. We'll stick it right between those two. We have to get it in the right place first. 0, 0.1. Should have worked. Where is it? What did I forget to do? Oh, it just took a while to recompile. That's weird. So we have a star in the back. Actually, I want more points than that to make it look more like those bursty things. And it was supposed to be yellow, not green. And we want ratio 0.8 instead. There we go. That's more like the star. Like we're highlighting this and I was like, hey, look here. There's something here important. And maybe we want it greener, slightly greener, and a bit more pronounced. Yellow, nah, yellow is better. And we need some sort of alert for this. Like this might be a critical alert, and maybe we should make this one slightly bigger than the icon. I can show you another technique for that. Because by default it takes up the whole thing with, and you can say 110% in height equals 110%, and that'll extend slightly beyond, but it doesn't. You notice it just gets clipped. It goes right to the side. Even if you put 120%, yeah, you can actually see it. In this case, it fills it up, but you don't actually see it because there's no border on it. So you might want to add a stroke width equals 1 and stroke color. We'll make this a dark yellow, just so we can see that going way on the edge. Now you can see we're alerted to this thing, and I don't know if you really want, I just need something to show that there's a star on here. And we can bring the user's attention to it. And so let's do another alert here. Important equals observable. And we're just going to say false now. I'm going to make something very explicit. Set importance equals function. We'll just set it true and say clear importance. And maybe this is a configuration thing, an update thing. I don't know. I just want to show some other technique for adding and removing animation, that how this can be done. And so we do it this way. While true, value equals important. We only want to show this when there's something important. Okay. And of course I have to add buttons to set importance. So we're going to do the same, copy paste down at the bottom again. And once again I'm going to say I'll clean this up afterwards. Maybe. And set important. Clear important. And we should probably call this important too. Flag important then here. It's right over there. And so it appears and then disappears. Now we can do what all this wants to say is that this is another technique. And if we look at this, the code here is slightly different. These other whiles and these timelines, the elements are always there. The while condition doesn't change their existence. This new element indicator is always there. It's just hidden behind. And we explicitly changed the visibility, but the element is still there. And this also applies to the while string one. This element is always sitting behind there. This next while true, you notice the star is inside of it. This star is inside of it, and this now means that it actually completely disappears. When its importance is not true, it's going to be gone. It's not part of the UX at all. This is really important if the star was anyway something really complex, like a complex part of the UI. Right now it's just a star and it's not going to cost us much if this wasn't here or not. These while approaches also have the convenience that we can give these items names and they appear and disappear. When you use this approach, the naming gets a bit more difficult because you can't have one template review another template, and that's what happens here. Although in this case it'll actually work. But let's just go on to what all this said about animation adding. And so we're going to do adding animation here. And this happens whenever an element is added to the UI. And this is what's happening here. This combined with while true, this is not part of the UI. What happens when we add it? Which is different from up here on these other whiles where it appears and disappears. We're not actually adding it. So how do we want this one to appear? Let's do a scale first. Let's get it to appear very small first. Duration equals 0.3. And this is one that might do well with bouncing. Easing equals. Now let's do elastic. Elastic out. Okay, let's see what happens. Well, that didn't work. Huh. Why did that not work? All this, why doesn't it work? Let's make the duration really slow. In its case, it's something with the easing that I'm not seeing. It is. Okay, it really is just that easing. So it's probably doing it in the wrong side. I want elastic in. There we go. Okay, so that's all this is approach of adding it. And you notice in clear it just disappears entirely. And when using something elastic, I notice the duration has to be a lot higher. And this might also draw the user's attention to it a little bit more. And you might also want to draw the... Yeah, I think I got it now. And so we might want to do... Okay, I mean... If you really need to draw this user's attention to it, you're going to do more than this, but let's add a rotate in here as well. And I actually don't like these colors. I want to make it a bit redder. I don't know why. I just like it more colorful. Now, this is going to look really weird. You can spin stuff more than it's supposed to be. Okay, that was a bit way too much. Okay, so let's just circle this a little bit. And we're going to make it not do the whole time in the bouncing time. Let's see what happens. Okay, and this is because it's backwards. Remember, adding animations are played backwards, so if you want something to play at the end, you have to line it up to the end of your own. Okay, this is really excessive now. So let's not make it move very much at all. It's because of all the points it makes it go really, really ridiculous. So let's make it move a little bit. And at the same time, let's add a removing animation. And as Aldous points out, this is perhaps not the best case for adding a remove animation. This actually ends up being more costly in terms of performance than our while and hiding because of the adding, removing, and the double animations. But by all means, you can use it. In this one case, it's probably not going to cost that much, but I just wanted to show how it works because there are situations where you really want to use it. And we're going to just make this one blow up instead. We'll just make it disappear. And we can also just really make it disappear. We're going to start the opacity at 1. Oh, we can't do that. This is exactly one of the limitations of adding removing animation. I can't refer to this element inside here. Well, in this case I could, but we shouldn't. So, what do? Let's give this a timeline instead. Keyframe value equals 1, time equals 0. I just want to give it something to say 1.5, time equals 0.1, keyframe value equals... I should make it extend a bit longer. Some of these are a bit longer just because of the stream being 30 frames per second. I want you to be able to see the stuff. Value goes down to 0, time equals 0.4. Keyframe interpolation equals smooth, and let's see what this does. So we get it added, and when it goes away that way. So there's two ways, and this adds it, and this removes it. And if you're doing this animation, if you're doing this type of UX, you may actually want to hide the blue thing as well. Because sometimes it can be distracting, and this is really an aesthetics call, so your graphic designer probably going to make this choice here more than anything. But what I want to show is that you can actually affect multiple things. So far these effects have been localized, but if you really wanted to, this while true here can also modify something else. We notice we have this rectangle color here. We'll make this the back rect. And we can also change that here. If there's something important, let's actually shrink the back rect away. Now you can make it just disappear, but since it's going to be hidden, we can just do it that way as well. Scale target equals back rect factor equals 0.5, 0. And it doesn't matter, and it's going to be such a short effect. So now if we flag an importance, we end up having that. And I don't know if that really draws the user's attention. Like this really draws. Seeing this on the screen instead of this would make it really obvious to the user, hey, you should look at this. Stars not really something you use. Like the star class is here just because it's more of a placeholder. You should read star always like star placeholder until you have a nice graphic design, but that's okay. It also works, and it solves some situations just for testing. And even with this mode, we can still add alerts, but they're going to look a bit funny. They can still have alerts, and they can still have emails. They can still have the counter. And you notice it doesn't quite come from the back the same way. We kind of got lucky that it does. And we clear it, and you can just do these all together again at the same time. And so in this mode, these should be able to bounce as well. Should be able to bounce to the right. We have all these animations combined, and we should be able to shake it. And you might want to run this one if it's important to remind the user, like, hey, something's here. And when you clear all these, clear that, clear that. Go back and add that one, add the alert. So I think that covers a lot of what I wanted to do with today. I wanted to show these indicators, and I'll push the code up even in this state to the Git repository. I'll post along with a video. And I think, so we covered the various ones. We have the basic thing, we have an email in there. Instead of an eggplant, we have an email, fine. And if we add an email, it pops out, and it keeps incrementing there. And we show how to make it circle, but it'll expand. And if you clear it, we just make it disappear. That was option number one. The second one is we add an alert that pops out of the bottom, and when you clear it, it slides away. That's another option. And both of those are very realistic options. And then the third alert, this really ugly one, because I'm running out of common techniques you use to add alerts, we're using a third technique where the item actually appears and disappears from the actual UI tree, and this is using adding animation, removing animation, and they all work. I would avoid using adding and removing animation. It's a bit trickier to use. It's usually reserved for adding and removing things from a list, but if you had like a lot of indicators, now obviously for a small icon you wouldn't, but say you had an item in a list with like a variable number of indicators, it's a totally legitimate way to go. So for example, anytime you have an each statement, so anytime you have something like each, this is typically where you see adding, removing animations. They can be used in other cases, but you shouldn't find this in any of our best practices. We usually won't do this, only inside each, because then it makes sense that things are coming and going, and it's a lot clearer. Whereas this setup here, it's a bit harder to conceptually understand where things are coming and going. So that's my presentation for today. I'll try to clean up more. On Wednesday, I'm not quite sure what I'll do yet, but Wednesday at 3, I'll be sure to do some other presentation. It might do with animation again, if I can think of something. If you have any suggestions, just let us know, or let me know, either in my chat. You can follow me on Twitter, post me a message, or go onto our Fuse Tools Slack. And don't forget to subscribe to me or follow me on Twitch and Twitter, and also these will be on YouTube afterwards for sharing. And I thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the show.